Hello and welcome. Today, we are jumping right into an explainer that honestly, one of the most consequential and high-stakes corporate dramas of our entire lifetimes. We're talking about the battle over the soul and the literal legal structure of OpenAI. This isn't just your standard corporate tug-of-war over money. No, this is a fight over who gets to control the future of artificial general intelligence, or AGI. Our analysis today draws directly from a really fascinating deep dive with commercial litigator and advocate Tyler Whitmer, who has been tracking every twist and turn of this transition. To really set the stakes for what we're about to cover, listen to this striking quote from Tyler Whitmer. He says, "If your baseline for comparison is an idealistic view of what OpenAI was meant to be, I think this is in some sense a catastrophe." Wow, catastrophe. That is a heavy word. You see, OpenAI started as a nonprofit dedicated entirely to protecting humanity. But recently, they tried to pivot into a massive profit-driven enterprise. And the compromise that ultimately emerged from all of this left a lot of people feeling like the public lost something absolutely massive. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to break this down into 5 parts. First, the radical restructure plan. Second, regulators' pushback. Third, the safety committee's teeth. Fourth, the AGI control compromise. And finally, will this actually work? Part 1. The radical restructure plan, sidelining the nonprofit. So OpenAI's identity has shifted drastically over the years. We're looking at a stark difference between their founding promise and the reality of the business proposal they dropped in late 2024. Let's rewind to 2015. OpenAI was founded strictly as a nonprofit, its sole legal purpose to ensure that AGI benefits all of humanity. Pretty noble, right? But fast forward to December 2024, and the business arm proposed this massive restructure. The plan was to effectively sideline that nonprofit entirely, turning it into just a minority shareholder with basically no real management control. This move was so incredibly aggressive that it actually triggered a dramatic legal intervention, which eventually led to the final 2025 compromise we're dissecting today. Moving right along to Part 2, regulators' pushback, the countermove. Well, as you can imagine, that December proposal didn't just fly under the radar. Thanks to some really scrappy public advocacy, the Attorneys General of California and Delaware stepped right in. They forced OpenAI into a new corporate vehicle known as a Public Benefit Corporation, or PBC. Now, a PBC is fundamentally a for-profit entity, but there's a catch. It's legally required to balance financial returns with a stated public benefit. The regulators basically drew a line in the sand and insisted that this new PBC couldn't just chase profits endlessly. It had to enshrine the original nonprofit's mission, safe, beneficial AGI, right into its very founding documents. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive pivot the regulators forced. Look at the contrast. The attempted corporate heist in December wanted to sideline the nonprofit into just generic grant-making, general education and health, stuff with almost zero focus on actual AI safety. But the final, legally binding structure? The nonprofit retains absolute control over safety and security decisions. On top of that, they secured a whopping $25 billion fund dedicated specifically to health and technical solutions for AI resilience. And the financial shift here was just as massive, $130 billion. That's billion with a B. Because the regulators stepped in and brought in independent financial advisors, the nonprofit didn't just get pushed out the back door with pennies on the dollar. No, they retained an enormous, undeniably massive financial stake in the new for-profit entity. Specifically, the nonprofit held on to a 26% slice of the pie. That 26% is exactly what secures that $130 billion valuation we just talked about. And get this, on top of that, they also hold an undisclosed warrant for future shares if OpenAI's valuation increases tenfold over the next 15 years. This gives the nonprofit some very serious financial leverage moving forward. But, it wasn't just about the money. The Attorneys General maintained some very specific legally binding hooks to ensure ongoing oversight. California signed a binding memorandum of understanding, and Delaware issued a statement of non-objection. What does that mean in plain English? It legally requires OpenAI to hold biannual meetings with the nonprofit board and quarterly meetings with senior staff. Most importantly, they have to give the AGs a 21-day advance notice before making any changes that might undermine this oversight. It's a crystal clear warning. Regulators are watching every move. Which brings us to Part 3, the Safety Committee's teeth, paper versus practice. The primary safety check in this new structure comes down to just 4 people. They make up the Safety and Security Committee, or SSC. These 4 individuals literally hold the keys to halting dangerous AI models. We've got Zico Coulter, a machine learning academic, Adam D'Angelo, the CEO of Quora, Paul Nakasone, a retired U.S. Army general with some deep cybersecurity expertise, and Nicole Seligman, a highly seasoned corporate leader. It is an incredibly diverse group spanning academia, tech, the military, and corporate leadership. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer contrast between the immense power the SSC has on paper versus the pressure they are going to face in practice. On paper, they have the explicit authority to halt the release of multi-billion-dollar models if they deem them unsafe. They can literally walk in and pull the plug. But in practice, think about it. These are 4 part-time volunteer corporate directors. They're going up against the immense commercial pressure of a company racing to build AGI, backed by investors who are demanding massive, world-changing returns. Part 4. The AGI Control Compromise: What Humanity Lost. We have to talk about the most poignant concession made during all these negotiations. Let's look at what was actually lost here. The original promise was that once artificial general intelligence was achieved, the nonprofit would exclusively control it for the benefit of all humanity. Microsoft's intellectual property license was supposed to terminate the very second AGI was reached. But the new reality? The new public benefit corporation gets to commercialize AGI just like any other tech product. And that Microsoft license? It doesn't terminate anymore. It now extends all the way out to 2032. This brings us right back to Tyler Whitmer, who just perfectly sums up the emotional and practical weight of this compromise. He notes, the whole point of OpenAI was to make sure that whoever develops and controls AGI is not a profit-driven organization, and that is now gone. For anyone who believes AGI is going to fundamentally transform human society overnight, putting it in the hands of a profit-driven entity, even a public benefit corporation, well, it feels like a total violation of the very reason OpenAI was created in the first place. Let's wrap things up with part 5. Will this actually work? Lingering doubts. For this highly complex hybrid agreement to actually succeed, OpenAI has to prove they are serious. We're looking at 3 crucial next steps. First, the safety committee absolutely cannot just be for volunteers. They must hire a dedicated, independent management staff to help them audit these incredibly complex, massive AI models. Second, they need to add a genuinely independent director to the nonprofit board who actually has true AI safety expertise. And third, they must maximize transparency. The public needs to see exactly how they are complying with their safety mission, not just looking at their profit margins. So the crucial point is this: paper versus practice. We have all these wonderful legal agreements and all these oversight tools, but at the end of the day, will 4 volunteers really have the intestinal fortitude to stand up to what is rapidly becoming the most valuable private company in history? If a $100 billion product launch is on the line, can they really look the CEO in the eye and say no? The legal frameworks are in place. The regulators successfully pulled them back from the absolute brink. And yes, the safety mission is enshrined. But ultimately, it all comes down to human courage. When billions, maybe trillions of dollars are on the line, will the safety committee actually use its teeth? That is the ultimate question, and frankly, it's one that only the next generation of AI will be able to answer.